Okay, perfect. I got the go ahead from Mariah, so I think we are good to go. So welcome everyone, really excited to be here. This is the Recruitment Boot Camp 4.0. You are our wonderful cohort. I know as we were getting back the leadership acknowledgement forms, people seemed really excited, and we're really excited to be here and showing you this information. And just so all of you know, today is going to be introductions. I really want to make sure to know who's in the cohort, just the expectations that we have in this learning collaborative, and then we're going to really lay the groundwork for what we're going to be talking about throughout these 7 sessions. So everything from comprehensive workforce plan, the self-assessment, and changing workforce landscape. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is our Star Center team. I wanted to put it as one of the first slides because everybody is on today. I will be the one presenting, but I really couldn't do it without this team. So we have Suzanne Spear. She is our Senior Director of Workforce Development. Mariah Blake, she is our Program Manager. We have Helen Ravenir and Alex Rowland. They are both our training specialists, and I am Michelle Fernandez Gabilondo. I'm the Associate Director of Workforce Development, and I believe that they're all sending little waving hi hands. So, and we're here to help in any way that we can. You have our contact information, so please reach out. That's really what our learning collaboratives are about. It's engaging, asking questions, learning from each other, not just us at the Star Center, but also from one another, your fellow peers. So before we get started, I did want to talk about the Association of Clinicians for the Underserved. That's who we are. And as it says here, our focus is that access to care, the clinical support. We focused on the development of those transdisciplinary teams. We were funded by National Health Service Corps alumni. A lot of what we do has changed over the years, but the core of our mission and our values and our goals have stayed the same. And what brings us here today is the Star Center. So we were awarded a national cooperative agreement in 2014. We are funded by the Bureau of Primary Healthcare. That's the program specifically bringing this learning collaborative today. We're one of the 21 national training and technical assistance partners, which are known as NCAPs. But what I really want to point out from this slide is all of our resources are free, our training, our technical assistance. So that's why I say, enhance what you learn in these sessions by reaching out to us, asking us questions. This is our website. You'll be able to find all of our resources on there. And then also this is our email. So if you don't have one of our specific emails, you can just use the info@chcworkforce.org, and that actually will go to me, and then I filter it out to the rest of the team as appropriate. So let's get through some housekeeping items just as a start with anything, and we'll go through a lot of these intro slides at the beginning of most of our sessions just to really emphasize these key points. So the session is being recorded. We are going to post the recording in the discussion board. So I wanted to stop for a moment and just let everyone know you should have access into the discussion board. I know for some people, I believe there was one individual in our cohort where the email for access bounced back. So if you have not had access or did not get the email to get access into the discussion board, please let us know. And Mariah Blake, she is your go-to person to ensure that you have access. We really want you to be present. This is all about you and your learning. If you can be on camera, that's awesome. It's always wonderful to see everyone, but also really understand if you can't be on camera. I know most of you are in, it's the middle of your work day. You may be in the office, those type of things. But if you can, it'd be wonderful. We also have the chat box. You can unmute yourself. So as we're presenting, I'm completely happy to stop at any time to answer any questions. So feel free to just jump in, ask your questions, but also share your comments and thoughts, because really, again, you're learning not just from us, but from each other as well. If you are having some technical difficulties, oh, and thank you, Mariah. I saw that Mariah put in the chat that the discussion board email should have come from info@chcworkforce.org. And yes, sometimes it does go into spam. So if you could check that, that would be great. And if you don't have it, then go ahead and email Mariah and she'll be able to help you out. And Mariah, could you put your email also in the chat? I know it's in one of the slides and we will send these slides to everyone, but just so they have it in case they need it. Thank you. So yeah, Mariah will be your go-to person for any technical difficulties you may be experiencing. And then what we're going to do is after each session, we'll have an evaluation. We just want to know how we're doing. And, you know, if there are any issues or anything, we really love to reach out one-on-one just to see what we can do for you and how to make this as valuable as possible of a time for what you need and what you're hoping to get out of this. So we do also have a pre-assessment. So that is different than our general evaluation. Our evaluation is going to look at that specific session, how things are going, you know, if you got what you needed from it. We also do a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. And this is looking at where do things currently stand in your recruitment processes, both with the work that you're doing and at your health center. And then at the end of the seventh session, we'll go back to see how things have changed as you've gone through all of this material. And I know Mariah was going to put our pre-assessment in the chat. Oh, perfect. Mariah's way ahead of me, so I really appreciate that. So what I was going to do, I was going to give everyone just about 2 minutes or so. If you could click on that and go ahead and fill it out. It's, I believe, about 4 short questions on a Likert scale and just your general information. So I'm going to stop talking for 2 minutes and then we'll all reconvene again to continue today's presentation. So I'll give it 2 minutes at 3:12, depending on where you are. I'm in the East Coast, and then we can all join back together. Oh, and I do see some people on camera, so hello, welcome. Okay, so we just have 1 more minute. I'm trying to keeping track on my phone. And if you don't have the link, it is in the chat for the pre-assessment, or if you're just coming in, we were just taking 2 minutes to fill out the pre-assessment, which Mariah put the link to in the chat for everyone. Okay, so let's keep going. So I do want to go through just some goals, some expectations, the learning objectives, the outcomes of what we're going to be focusing on throughout this learning collaborative. So really what we want all of you to get out of this is building a strategy, building those processes, so those recruitment processes, and building relationships with each other as well. I know being in a virtual space, that can definitely be a little bit difficult, but we're going to try to really build something that allows you to have that interaction with each other. So you want to learn from materials that are presented. We'll bring in different people from our team who are expert faculty in the different topics that we're going to be talking about, and then also just learning from each other. We want you to share your challenges and your strengths, especially right now. Recruitment is very difficult in any field, but especially healthcare. And I'm sure all of you are going through that. That's exactly why you are here with us. So please share, arrive with questions, be open to discussions. We want you to leave with knowledge. We want you to update your processes and then develop and implement that strategy that we're talking about. And that really is your recruitment plan, or also what we call the comprehensive workforce plan. So the way that we're going to achieve this is we're going to have a few things. So obviously we'll have the live webinar sessions. We are going to, throughout the different sessions, put dedicated time for discussion. We're going to have assignments, resources, tools that'll be after each session. All of you should have discussion board access, as I mentioned. If you need technical assistance, that's what we're here for, so you can always reach out to us. And also what's going to happen is after we're done, at 3 to 6 months after the Learning Collaborative, after the Recruitment Boot Camp, we're going to follow up directly with each of you who are here today. And just to see how you're doing, how you're implementing your recruitment plan, how is everything going for you? And then at the same time, we can again offer that one-on-one TA, but whether or not the Learning Collaborative is going on, you can always reach out to us. So one of the things I really wanted to do with this is at the beginning of each of the sessions, or at least for some of the sessions, have at least one health center present. I want you to talk about your recruitment processes and how things are going. So not for this first session, but we'll reach out prior to the second session and hopefully set it up so someone can present. And again, that peer learning is really a vital component. We don't want it to be 100% didactic where it's just us talking to you. The first session will be a little bit more of that, but we're hoping to ensure that it's still interactive. There are learning objectives and outcomes, and really, if you could see, it's like in 3 stages. It's assessing where you currently are. That's part of what we're going to be doing today, and the homework that you're going to have. We want you to develop or update that retention and recruitment plan, which we also call a comprehensive workforce plan, and then finally implement it. And that's where we're going to reach out to you in that 3 to 6 month mark to see how it's going. How is that implementation going for you? So I want to do an icebreaker just to kind of get to know people. First, we're going to do an icebreaker, and then we'll go into introductions. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Helen will be sharing her screen. But if you could go to www.menti.com and put in this code, and I would recommend you leave this window open because there's going to be 3 questions that we'll go through today. If you have a cell phone, you can also just put it up to the screen, use the QR code. And the first question we're going to ask is just, what's your favorite place in the world? And this could be any place. It could even be a made up place, but it's always nice to kind of get to know what people like, who is part of this group. So let me stop sharing. And then Helen, if you can share your screen. Awesome. Watertown, Canada. Kauai, Valdez, Chalating, Patagonia, Ireland. Oh, yes. So Lucy needs the code. Let me put it in the chat for you. Or actually, is anybody able? Oh, I can write it in. There we go. And you'll also notice at the top of the screen, the code is there, and it's menti.com. Oh, thank you, Helen. Georgia, St. John. Perfect. So I think everyone went with a real place, and it really could be anywhere. And actually, Barcelona, I was going to say my favorite place in the world is Madrid. I have a lot of family from there, family from the Basque region of Spain, so that is my absolute favorite place in the world. The beach, anywhere, yeah, totally. I grew up in Florida, and that's like a must. Okay, oh, Cape Cod. I see a few more coming in, so I'll give it just like 30 more seconds. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for sharing that. So we're going to go on to the next mentee slide. And this one is going to ask you if you could tell us more about yourself. So this is really, what is your name, your location, your health center, the position, role you're in, the time that you're in that role. So really share with us what you're comfortable sharing, but it really would be great just to give us more insight on who is here today. Obviously, those of us who went through your application, we know, but for the rest of your cohort. And if anybody would also prefer to introduce themselves like on the phone, go ahead and unmute yourself. You can also write it into the chat, whatever you prefer. Great. So welcome, Pam. So we have John, welcome as well. Laura, so from Maryland, from Connecticut, Michigan. Angela, welcome. Stephanie. And I see there's a big variation in how long people have been in their roles, so that's great. So welcome, Steve. And then Helen, if you would mind scrolling down, that would be great. So we have Latrell from Kentucky, Lucy. And I know we have about 16 people today, so I want to make sure everybody has the chance to put in their name. Also, I know that for some of you, you have your fellow colleagues on the line. One thing that I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned this in the housekeeping. So your link to get on here, your Zoom link is individual and specific to you. And if you would like to have colleagues join the Learning Collaborative, just let us know, reach out to us, and we can definitely do that. But we've noticed in the past when people share links and only one person can get on. So we just want to make sure everybody can have access and that all of you are able to sign on. So we have Dorothy, Elaine from Maine, Marissa, and then I see Adrian from Texas in the chat. Great, I think that's most people. So I think we have a good amount of responses. Well, thank you so much. Welcome everyone. And yeah, I really do love the variation in how long people have been in their positions. Again, as we go through this material, it's as we presented, it's also going to be what you can modify for what works for you, for your health center, for how long you've been in your position. And if you're someone who has been in your position longer, really take that leadership step and, help your fellow cohort members because you have so much knowledge and so much information. So wonderful. Thank you, Helen. So if you could go ahead and stop sharing, I will go back to the presentation. Oh, wrong one. There we go. Okay. So as I said, today's session is really more about building the foundation, having the general information. And for some of you, this information may be, very familiar, things you have done before, but we want to make sure that everybody in the cohort is starting off at the same baseline. So that is really, really important. So please just keep that in mind. If this is something you're like, yeah, I already know this, we will go much deeper into this as we go through the different sessions. So at ACU, at the STAR Center, we always start by saying workforce is the fuel. It's really what fuels your health center. If you've been to any of our other trainings, you've most likely seen this slide, but it really is essential, because without a workforce, you don't have a health center. And, the focus eventually is the population you're working with, the clients you're focused on. And that means also taking care of your workforce, investing in them, investing in those operational staffing resources. And the way that we look at all this from sort of this large scale view that we're having today are through different core components that we talk about here at the Star Center. So as we go through the different sessions, the different recruitment processes, we're really in some way or another going to hit on these core components. And what this really means is that to have that really effective retention and recruitment process, an effective health center workforce, all of these things really need to be in place. So the data-informed workforce plan, the tested recruitment and retention strategies, health professions training program. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but also in future sessions. Equitable compensation, that is a huge, huge part of recruiting, especially today's workforce. Supporting diversity, having the high functioning managers, a culture focus on engagement. And we do talk, and we won't go as much into this in our recruitment boot camp, but we talk about the position of a chief workforce officer. And if possible, having that person in your health center that is dedicated to the strategy when it comes to workforce. So those are, as I said, our core components, what we're going to really be hitting on as we go through these different sessions. I also want to talk about a comprehensive workforce plan, because so it has many different names, and here sometimes we'll talk about a recruitment plan, a retention and recruitment plan, but really all of it ultimately comes together to form a comprehensive workforce plan, because there's so many different pieces that go into recruiting someone, and it doesn't exist in a silo. So we built this definition, and we were very intentional about keeping it broad. What does it mean to have this workforce plan? What is the process you can take? And the thing with this is that it's going to look different for each and every one of your health centers. But the truth is, many of you, a lot of what we're going to be talking about, you're already doing. And what we're really going to be honing in is, writing it down. How do you work with it? How do you update it? How do you make it useful for you? And you can always download this definition on our website. I made sure to hyperlink it in this slide so that all of you could have it. But the way that we see this process, as you can see, recruitment is kind of there in the middle. But again, it doesn't exist in a silo. You really need to have a vision. You need to fully assess, and this is going to be today's homework, what is currently going on? What is the environment in your health center? What are those workforce needs? We do say start with retention before you even move to recruitment, because the people that you already have there are really the best ambassadors to bring people in, to promote your health center, to help you recruit. Once you recruit people, you also have to develop them. You have to make sure that, they have work ladders, career ladders, all of these different things, different pathways. That is a fundamental part of the recruitment process as well. And we'll talk about this, especially with job announcements. How do you let potential candidates know that this is something that is incredibly important in your health center and you really value that? And then finally, as with anything that you do, you have the information, you have the data, you've assessed, you have your recruitment processes in place. You also need to have an action plan, because this is an ongoing thing. It's not, we did it once, we're good, we have the formula, we can always use that. Things change very, very rapidly. Another thing that I wanted to point out, because there is a lot of conversation around this, that and with the requirements of what HRSA requires from health centers, from PCAs. So this is just kind of like a separate side note, but I did want to clarify this, that in your comprehensive workforce plans, one of the fundamental areas that you really need to think about is health professions, education, and training. It's an incredibly important component of recruiting. building that pathway, having people that you already know that you're bringing into your health center that are training there to work. It should be a part of your comprehensive workforce plan, but it is not the entire comprehensive workforce plan. So really the way that HRSA looks at this, many of your PCAs will be talking to you about this, is we have all these different components within the development strategy. You're going to have where you're going to focus in on health professions, education, and training. And again, you're thinking, well, this is a recruitment boot camp, but these things cannot exist in a silo. They all have to influence one another for it to work in a very effective manner. So why create this plan, again, that includes that recruitment component? You need to track the successes that you're doing. You also need to identify those gaps and those opportunities. Again, it all goes back to, if you want to move forward, if you really want to succeed in this, you also need to know what is working, what isn't, and continuously go back to that, because just things change and they change very rapidly. You want to make sure that when you're recruiting, when you're putting all of this together, that it is aligning with the goals that you have, that you're able to innovate with that data. And we'll have a session where we'll talk more about data. We'll talk more about how you can really utilize that. But again, I just wanted to kind of have everyone on the same playing field with the same definitions that we're working with, so that as we go through the other sessions, we all know what we're talking about. And we do have a recruitment and a retention and recruitment plan template, purposefully named that way to focus first on retention and recruitment. And we have an instructions, a template, and an action plan. We are updating this to be called the Comprehensive Workforce Plan template. But I wanted to make sure that all of you knew about this. You have access to this on our website. If you can't find it, I'm more than happy to send you the link, or if someone from our team could also put it in the chat, that would be excellent. And this has those components that we're going to talk about throughout this learning collaborative. So before I move into this next part, I know I've said a lot. So a lot about comprehensive workforce plans, building pathways, what we're looking for in the learning collaborative. Does anybody have any questions? I want to make sure to not kind of just go through all the information and not give you all a moment. Oh, and Mariah put the link for our R&R template in the chat, so all of you can have access to that. And again, if you have any questions, just jump in at any time. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. I don't see anybody unmuting themselves. So I think we're good to move forward. So what we're going to do throughout these 7 sessions is really go through this recruitment ladder. Each of the pieces that are here, we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about why it's so fundamentally important to look at this as you're building your recruitment plan, your recruitment processes. We're going to look at promising practices around this, just a lot of different things that will hopefully help you hone in on those areas where you need to identify those opportunities. Because for each of you, for each of your health centers, it's probably going to be very different. Some of you probably have already, your recruitment budget down, and you know exactly what you're going to be spending. Their leadership has bought in, you have the investment around this. So that's where we really want to bring you in. That's that moment where, as a health center, we want you to present on this, talk to your fellow cohort members, but you may need a little bit more help on the advertising part. What is, language to really capture people? What are those things that people who are applying for jobs now are looking for? All of these different pieces. So we are going to go through each of these components in the ladder. But what I did want to do, and Mariah also send out to everyone a welcome packet, and it lays out the 7 sessions and what the topics are about. However, I want to go back to Mentimeter because I want to ask each of you really, what are your recruitment needs? And as you look at this ladder, where are the areas where you want to focus in the most? Where may you need the most assistance, the most help? And the reason is, as we go through, as we build out the other sessions, again, we really want to make this about your learning. And if we need to spend a little bit more time on one of these areas, then we're more than happy to do that. So, and I see we have in the chat, yes. Thank you, Mariah. So Mariah put different links that you can download. The welcome packet, if you didn't receive it, you can download it from the chat. And then also all of this will be in the discussion board. So let me stop sharing. Helen, I'm going to bring it back to you. If you could go into Mentimeter. And again, as you're answering this question, really think about what do you, and if you need everything, you're like every single one of these areas, we're really at the start, you know, we need to know more. That's totally fine. But I would love to know, where do you want to hone in so that as we build out the other sessions, again, I can focus on what you need. So perfect. Developing process and procedures, absolutely. And we will talk about that, especially in the beginning when we talk about the recruitment team, the priorities. That's where we're going to be looking at this. So recruiting diverse candidates to a rural area. Yes. This has been, you know, recruiting in general right now, it is such a challenge, but definitely with rural areas, completely understand that. We're going to talk a lot about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. How does that play into your recruitment, what we call JEDI? Budget, advertising, and social media. Yep. And actually, the advertising and the social media is one of my favorites. What I always offer when we do these learning collaboratives is, if you're interested, I'm more than happy to go through kind of in a very detailed way, look at your job announcements and let you know some of the language maybe that you can change, what you can put in there to hopefully make it more attractive for candidates. So social media sourcing, diversity, absolutely. Job postings, do we use Indeed, ADP, electronic application tracking, or no? Yep. And you know, the other thing with this again is that it is going to be you know, specific to what your needs are. But what we're going to try to do is make sure, I'm going to go back to this slide and just look through each of the sessions to make sure that we're hitting on this. Starting the program from scratch, retention. Yep. As I said, recruitment can't be done without retention. Advertising, language, onboarding, creative job descriptions, retention, publicly posting job salary ranges, and we need to all start doing it. Yes. So actually, I'm not sure who posted this because this is anonymous, but 100% we're going to be talking about this. And that always creates a lot of conversation because yes, job salaries should absolutely be in your job announcements, but I also understand the complexity around that. And Adrian says developing existing staff as well as new onboards, revamp, reevaluate, starting anew. Absolutely. Yep. And I think that's great because in many ways, you're not really starting from scratch because you have so much already there, but it's how do you make those changes to start focusing in on what those new needs are. So that's a big part of what we'll be discussing. So thank you so much, Helen. All right, so let's turn back to the presentation. And as I know a few of you said, retention, 100%, as I said, it has to work in tandem with recruitment. So we are going to talk a little bit about this towards the latter part of the learning collaborative. This is where we bring in conversations such as compensation, but when we do the job announcements, those type of things, we'll talk about posting salary ranges, but just equitable compensation, work schedules, career paths. And then mission is incredibly important. If you remember back in the comprehensive workforce plan, I said start with the vision, but also your mission lays down that foundation. And it really is the principles and the values for the workforce that you're building. You know, your mission is external for what your health center is doing, but it also needs to reflect how you're treating the people that work at your health center. So as I mentioned, we need to assess. Assessing is fundamentally important. And this is going to be your first homework to get everything started. So we have a self-assessment tool, and this is really going to give you tools and tips on where you currently stand. Again, if we don't know where we are, we don't know where we need to go. And one of the other things too that we say, it's really important to be proactive, not reactionary. And if we don't have these things in place, we are very reactionary in our recruitment, our retention processes, because we have to be. It's, it's an immediate thing. So when you do this assessment tool, you're going to know, where are you now? These are the questions that you're going to be asked. What are some of those initial recommendations that you're going to be receiving? And you'll see that from the response that you receive. You'll get that immediate feedback. And then what additional questions should you ask? And that's something that we want you to bring back into this time together, into these sessions, so we can have those discussions. And what the self-assessment tool is going to do, or the different sections that it's going to ask you about, it's going to ask you about your provider capacity. That is incredibly important. And, as we know, it's not just recruiting providers, it's recruiting all staff. Every single person in your health center, including each of you, plays such a fundamental role. But understanding that capacity, because at the end of the day, it is serving patients, it is serving clients. What is that like? The infrastructure, you are going to be looking at your recruitment and retention plan, and it's okay if you don't have one, but if you do, how can you then make those updates? Leadership, compensation. I do think compensation is going to come up a lot, and it's an incredibly important topic to discuss. And then other strategies. So all of this will be in the assessment tool. As you see on this slide, you can access it directly from here. However, we will also post it on the discussion board. We'll make sure that you get access to this so you can complete it prior to the next session. And if there's anyone who is super excited to present for session 2 or wants to talk about their self-assessment tool, please feel free to let me know at any point. But I am going to be reaching out to see who would be interested in sharing. So as I mentioned, again, this is going to be a little bit more didactic, and that's really weird. It's the screen is making my my face super red and bright. Apologize for that. But again, we need to look at what's happening in the future. What is going on now, and what will be going on, so that we can know what do we need to do when it comes to recruitment. A huge part of that is that the change, it's an essential thing. It's actually, in many ways, a really wonderful thing to see what's happening in the workforce. There's a lot more empowerment in your workforce. But of course, with that, as organizations, as health centers, there's some changes, and change can be very difficult, but it can also be very costly. There's a lot of different things that come into that are very important to take into account. So your self-assessment, that is really one of those first steps. It really is an inevitable and a constant thing. So when we talk about recruitment, retention, workforce, comprehensive workforce plans, it's fundamental to have the leadership buy-in. So we're also going to talk about, for those who may not have that, how do you talk to leadership about it? But the truth is, the COVID-19 pandemic, the social justice movements really catapulted that change and put it out there in a way that it just never was before. So as leaders, and all of you, again, I really feel all of you here are that change needs to be embraced, and that needs to be adapted. And what was great in the responses that most of you had, I think that's already there. And there's this excitement around, how can we change? How can we move towards the future? And I thought I heard someone, I don't know if maybe you were accidentally unmuted, but if there is anyone that has any questions, just jump in. You can feel free to tell me to stop talking at any point. I don't take that personally. So what are some things to consider that are really important when we look at this changing landscape? Again, building the foundation. Think about this as we go through those recruitment processes in the upcoming sessions, it's going to be really important to keep these things in mind. And this is really when you're promoting, when you're recruiting people, they are looking for this, whether it's in the job announcements, in the interviews. Some people, this is exactly what they're filtering out for the positions that they're looking for. Hybrid workspaces, being able to work from home, it really is an expectation for many, many people. One of the things that the pandemic did, it showed people can work from home. I know that can get a little bit more complicated in healthcare because that's not always the case with everyone. However, looking at creative ways, a 4-day work week, more flexible schedules, all of these things. So as you're considering these topics, you have to think about policies, legal requirements. Are you offering stipends? There's a lot of things that go into play with that. Now more than ever, you have so many multi-generational staff, and all of them, there's differences and there's similarities, but it's important to understand the needs of the different people who are coming into your workplace. And generational diversity, that's part of the diversity that you have in your workforce. But also what we're seeing, a lot of the baby boomers, and even some Gen X individuals, they're retiring. And that is one of the biggest things that's creating this workforce shortage, is that retirement. So you got to think about the succession planning, all of those things. Compensation equity, a huge part of what people are looking for when they're looking for a job. And it is an incredibly important thing that as health centers, you need to think about, invest in. We'll definitely get deeper into this, and I think we'll have some really great conversations. Pathway development. How do you create those training programs? How do you prepare the next generation and recruit them into your health center? The idea of grow your own. I also do want to point out that here says pathway development. We have decided not to use the word pipeline, given the fact that it is an offensive term to many Indigenous populations. So we have been very deliberate in ensuring one of the recommendations was to use pathway rather than pipeline. But I know that usually has been the term that has been discussed. So that's what we mean when we say pathway. And why does all this matter? It's just, we're in the Great Resignation. All of you know this. I wanted to keep this slide here because sometimes just seeing the numbers again, it really highlights why those other components that we just talked about in the other slide are so fundamentally important. Why you have to promote yourself, build your brand. When someone comes to interview, you're not just interviewing them, they're interviewing you just as much. Again, the landscape has changed and you have to change with it. So we really want to take that data-driven approach. We want to see what is really going on and how can we identify those root causes, make those changes. Again, your self-assessment is that first place to start, and then develop those tailored workforce plans for your health center. And I actually decided to not go through this slide. I was initially going to play it, and then I kind of went back and forth on this, but I wanted everybody I left this slide in for the purpose of, I really just would like everyone to listen to this. It's a very short audio from NPR, and the people who are featured in it are not healthcare workers, but it doesn't really make a difference. It's basically why people are quitting their jobs. And again, I don't think this is any new information that all of you have not heard before. But it is important to just have that reminder, because sometimes we just don't talk to our staff. We don't, we may do exit interviews, but we don't have the full picture of everything. And basically what it is people just want something different. They want to be able to have more flexibility. The pandemic also forced us to reevaluate where our values are. And for a long time, work created the identity of so many people. And for many people now, they're like, no, work is not my sole identity. I have my family, I have my friends. Work is a part of that. So how can we come in the recruitment processes that we're going to build and that we're going to have you work on throughout these next couple of weeks? in order to really hit on that and attract those candidates who are like, okay, this is a place I want to work. This is a place that understands my needs and cares about that. But like I said, I wanted to leave the slide in because I was hoping all of you could listen to it on your own time. And the reason that I chose not to play it during this time is because I did want to allow for enough time for Q&A, and I want to go back to that Mentimeter slide deck, and Helen, you don't have to, don't worry right now, and just discuss a little bit more what you're looking for. So before I do that, and I'm going to stop sharing in a moment so that we can all see each other like in the little Brady Bunch squares, but does anybody have any questions to everything that was shared? And again, it, we're building a foundation together so that we all just have the same knowledge going forward on what we're going to be discussing. And I'm also, and I tell my team this all the time, I'm a social worker, so I'm totally comfortable with just like waiting here until people put stuff in. I don't want to force you to ask a question if you don't have one, but I did want to give people a moment to put it in the chat. And I'm just going to go through these last few slides while people may be putting in their questions. Oh, and I see we do have, oh, yes, absolutely. I got a direct message and just answering yes. So before the next session, please go on and complete the self-assessment. We would also like you to log on to the discussion board. The discussion board many times really serves as that repository for the resources that we're going to be working on. But I do want to try to put some engaging questions on there, try to create some dialogue. Feel free to introduce yourself. Again, you're going to be learning from us as much as you're learning from each other. So, but go ahead, complete the self-assessment tool and log on to the discussion board. If you don't have access to it, again, Mariah is your go-to person who'll be able to do that. And then, oh, and thank you, John. Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to have all of you here. I really think it's going to be a great session. Oh, and thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate that. So thank you both so much. It's been a long week, so hearing those comments is really great. And feel free also to reach out directly if you have questions, as I said. So let me also to remind everyone, our next session is going to be April 28th. We're going to start in that ladder we talked about. We're going to, discuss the self-assessment that all of you worked on. But then how are you looking at the recruitment that's going on in your community? What can you take from that? How are you building your recruitment team? And we want to get creative. There was one health center that we worked with, or I'm sorry, a health center who presented in a past, I believe it was a past recruitment boot camp. But one thing that was interesting is they have their behavioral health director as part of the recruitment team for every position, regardless of what it is, because behavioral health individuals, they're specifically trained in interviewing, understanding body language, those type of things, and they found it to be incredibly valuable. So we're going to talk about that. Who's on your recruitment team? How are you going to build it? And then I see there's more in the chat. Let's see. Yes, and Suzanne put on there in the Workforce Symposium, which is what I was about to mention. So thank you so much for the link. I really appreciate that. Laura, it's so wonderful having you here. Definitely looking forward to the upcoming sessions as well. And then John did have a question. Will the recording of this session be available in the discussion board? Yes. So you will get access to that, but it's also going to be posted on the discussion board as well as the PowerPoint, the link to the homework. And the homework in the following sessions, it's going to be documents where you start building those components of your comprehensive workforce plan. So those will also be posted on there. Also, what we will try to do, this one was a little bit different, but post the PowerPoint slides ahead of time in the discussion board so everybody can have access to them. And as Suzanne said, we do have a really wonderful event coming up. As I said, I love the interaction. I really, want to be able to see everyone. Sometimes it's hard online. So we're holding a workforce symposium and a retention and recruitment workshop in Nashville. If you're interested, we would love to have you there. We're like a pretty fun team. So you would get to meet all of us in person, which is always really nice, but just wanted to make sure, to plug that, but also it goes deeper into everything that we have talked about. So, and that was my last slide. So let me stop sharing and go back and just, we have about 8 minutes left, which was my goal to leave at least some time. Does anybody have any final questions or comments or anything? And I'm really happy to see you all on camera. Welcome. And for those who are not on camera, also welcome. Very happy to see you. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, not seeing anything. So how about this? I give you all 7 minutes back to your day. I know that's nothing, but maybe you can like grab water or coffee or something like that.